Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a world of flickering candlelight, drafty stone walls, and corsets so tight you might forget how to breathe. You're sitting stiff-backed on a throne that's more decorative than comfortable, dressed in a gown that weighs more than a toddler, and smiling graciously at a room full of people, half of whom would happily replace you, and the other half might already be planning how. Being queen in the Middle Ages sounds glamorous: crowns, jewels, banquets, but you probably won't survive this. Honestly, the embroidery alone is exhausting. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts, as all awful royal stories do, with a crown. Not just any crown, but one heavy enough to give you a permanent neck-ache. It's lined with gold, gems, and, rather inconveniently, centuries of bad decisions. The velvet is itchy, the metal pinches your scalp, and if you're unlucky, it might even be laced with poison. Yes, poison crowns were a thing. Historians still argue whether the story of Queen Isabella of Angouleme's supposed poisoned veil was real, or just 13th century gossip, but the paranoia was absolutely alive and well. Your crown in front of a massive, murmuring crowd, the bishop's Latin droning on while incense stings your eyes. Everyone staring at you, some with awe, others calculating exactly how they can benefit from your downfall. You're smiling because you've been trained to. You've practiced the right amount of demure eye contact and obedient kneeling. But deep down, you know this ceremony is less about you and more about what you now represent: a vessel for heirs, a diplomatic chess piece, and a very public symbol of national stability. Your coronation feast isn't much better. Sure, there's peacock pie, marzipan castles, and enough wine to float a small barge. But you can't really eat anything. Not because you're not hungry, but because royal women often fasted in public, both to seem pious and to avoid the risk of poisoning. One bite of the wrong goose liver pate and it's game over. So you poke at your trencher, basically a loaf of bread functioning as a plate, and hope nobody notices. You're just nibbling at the parsley garnish. Every move you make is watched. Every word you say gets repeated, twisted, reinterpreted. You're not allowed to get angry, or tired, or even sneeze at the wrong time. You're royal now. Which means your face is not your own. There are official expressions: the gentle smile, the downcast eyes of humility, the regal chin lift for major entrances. Anything else and someone's writing a letter to the archbishop. And speaking of letters, your life is now a medieval version of tabloid fodder. Nobles send reports to their homelands about your behavior. The queen looked pale today, one might write. Possibly pregnant. Or worse, the queen was seen laughing too freely with the Duke of Suffolk. Scandalous. Let's talk wardrobe. You may think medieval queen and imagine gowns flowing like liquid gold. And yes, technically, you're wearing silk and brocade. But it's heavy, hot, layered, tightly laced. Your underlayers alone could smother a goat. You're strapped into a kirtle, a surcoat, and some decorative sleeves the size of pillowcases. And don't even get me started on the headgear: veils, wimples, circlets, hennons, that's the cone-shaped hat, each one more ridiculous than the last. One French queen once wore a hennon so tall she couldn't fit through the door of her own chapel. Then there are the rituals. You can't just go to bed. No, you must be undressed ceremoniously by handmaidens, hair brushed 100 times seriously, and tucked in under more layers than your mattress. You're expected to say long prayers, perform symbolic gestures, and sleep in a specific position just in case someone peeks in. Why? Because queens are public property, even asleep. You're on display. Your day starts before sunrise with matins early. Morning prayers in the chapel and doesn't end until long after supper. You sit through council meetings you're not technically allowed to speak in. You smile through audiences with petitioners who bow so low they might pass out. You oversee the royal household, which is like managing a hotel, a daycare, and a traveling circus all at once. And don't forget about gifts. Everyone gives you gifts, but none of them are truly gifts. A tapestry from a duke, he wants a favor. A jeweled comb from a countess, she wants your ear about a marriage. Alliance, even a little ivory carving from that monastery. They're hoping you'll donate land. Every present is a transaction wrapped in ribbon and diplomacy. There's also the constant, unspoken awareness that someone wants your place. Maybe a cousin, maybe your husband's mistress, maybe a noblewoman who thinks she has a better claim. You're expected to be graceful, charitable, devout, but also politically savvy, fashionably influential, and endlessly fertile. It's like being a beauty queen, CEO, and none all rolled into one. With none of the perks. Of course, there's always the chance someone will accuse you of witchcraft. Maybe you gave birth to a daughter instead of a son. Maybe your garden is to green. Maybe someone important got a headache after speaking to you. Suddenly you're hiding your personal herbs and praying your cat doesn't meow too much. There's a famous case, Queen Joan of Navarre, wife of Henry IV, who was accused of using sorcery to try and kill her stepson. Historians still debate whether she was framed or actually got a little too experimental with medieval medicine. Either way, she was imprisoned for years. Because why not accuse the Queen of Magic when politics get messy? So yes, congratulations, you've made it to the throne. But don't get too comfortable. The shoes pinch, the bed's cold, the food's suspect. And every smile hides a sharpened knife. And that's just Monday. You're 13, or maybe 14. If your family's trying to stretch the truth to make things seem more appropriate, either way, you're standing in a foreign chapel, wrapped in furs and silence, about to marry a man who smells faintly of boiled beef and whose beard has its own ecosystem. He's at least twice your age, though that's considered a good thing, mature, they say. As if maturity is a virtue when you've never met the man before today. Your marriage isn't about love, or compatibility, or even vague toleration. It's about borders, dowries, alliances. Your parents are trying to secure peace, land, or trading rights, and your body just happens to be the signature at the bottom of the treaty. The ceremony is short, but the implications are eternal. You don't speak his language fluently, but it doesn't matter, no one expects you to say much. Your vows are rehearsed, your smile painted on. The church bells ring, the nobles cheer. And just like that, you're someone's wife. And by someone, we mean the kingdom's most powerful man who now legally owns your uterus. Because that's what this really is. You're not a person anymore. You're a vessel, a living cradle, a walking, talking, hopeful sun-producing political tool. The pressure starts immediately. Court ladies eye your waistline, midwives whisper. In corners, and every time you pass gas, someone wonders aloud if it's an early pregnancy symptom. And let's be clear, there's no privacy. The medieval royal bedroom is less romantic hideaway and more highly choreographed fertility performance. Sometimes your wedding night is witnessed. That's right, literal witnesses. Priests, nobles, servants, people whose job is to make sure the marriage is consummated. Which is a polite way of saying, watch you suffer silently while your new husband has no idea what he's doing. Historians still argue whether this practice was standard or reserved for contentious alliances. But even the rumor of it is enough to send a chill down your newly embroidered spine. Once you're officially joined, your days begin to blur. You're trained to run a household, to read letters, to manage accounts if needed, but also to keep quiet unless spoken to. Your husband leaves for wars, or tournaments, or brothel visits, none of which you're supposed to comment on. If you cry, you're too emotional. If you don't, you're cold. If you suggest anything, even something as minor as changing the draperies, you're meddling in affairs above your station. Meanwhile, you're adjusting to court life in a foreign land. The food tastes different, the customs are alien, and everyone seems to know the rules but you. In some courts, queens weren't even allowed to speak directly to men who weren't family members. Try navigating that while coordinating a feast or arranging the yearly pilgrimage. There's also the matter of your ladies-in-waiting. On paper, they're your friends. In reality, they're spies. They report your mood, your appetite, your menstrual cycle. One of them is probably related to your husband's favorite advisor. Another is writing home to her mother, the Duchess, about how tired you look this morning. You learn quickly, trust no one. And if, heaven forbid, you don't get pregnant right away, things get awkward. Fast. Your husband might seek comfort elsewhere, which everyone pretends is fine. His advisors might start dropping hints that maybe you're barren. Your in-laws start talking to bishops about divine punishment or unfavorable omens. You pray harder, eat more fennel, and start sleeping with relics tucked under your pillow. St. Margaret's girdle was a popular choice said to help with fertility. One queen supposedly drank wine steeped in crushed pearls to enhance her chances. Fun fact, pearls do not help with fertility. They do, however, ruin your kidneys. Let's say you do get pregnant. Hooray! Now you're more valuable than ever. Your body is now a state treasure. You are no longer allowed to ride horses, take walks alone, or eat soft cheese. Midwives surround you, priests bless you, herbalists poke you with things. And still, everyone is silently, desperately hoping you produce a son. If it's a daughter, they'll smile, they'll say how lovely and what a blessing, and then immediately start calculating how much less valuable she'll be as a marriage pawn. You, meanwhile, are gently reminded that queens who fail to produce male heirs tend to have short reigns. Or at least, increasingly lonely ones. Look at Anne of Bohemia. Married to Richard II of England, she was adored by the people and deeply loved by her husband. But she died childless at 28, and her legacy vanished almost overnight. Historians still argue whether political instability in Richard's reign was worsened by their lack of children or simply blamed on it. And remember, divorce isn't really an option. Not for you. Anyway, your husband can find loopholes and ailments, accusations of sorcery, theological complaints about consanguinity that's word distantly related in royal speak. But you get to live out your days in a convent, or if you're unlucky, imprisoned in a tower while everyone politely forgets you ever existed. Even staying married isn't exactly safe. Some kings were notorious for disposing of inconvenient wives. Poison, exile, accidents involving stairs, plenty of ways to become suddenly unavailable. There's a delightful account of Queen Isabella of France, wife of Edward II, who helped lead a rebellion against her husband. She won but was later imprisoned by her own son. No matter what you do, you're always balancing on a knife's edge. Be charming, but not flirtatious. Be obedient, but not spineless. Be fertile, but not too ambitious. One misstep, and the whispers start. One failed pregnancy, and the priest frown. One political scandal, and you're the first name on everyone's blame list. Marriage, for a medieval queen, is not a love story. It's a test of endurance, a slow, grinding chess match where the queen has power. Yes, but only as long as the king chooses not to knock her off the board. And checkmate, by the way, often comes in the form of a younger woman waiting in the wings, armed with ambition and a conveniently healthy set of childbearing hips. You wake up each morning to the sound of someone else breathing near your bedchamber door. Not because they're being creepy, though that depends on your definition, but because they're supposed to. That's your lady-in-waiting, or maybe one of the chambermaids, already in place to help you rise with dignity and a practiced hand. Welcome to court, a place where the walls may be velveted, but they've got ears. Where your entire social world is an elaborate trap disguised as afternoon tea. And where being queen doesn't make you queen bee. If anything, it puts you in the crosshairs of 100 whispering courtiers and charming diplomats who smile with their teeth clenched. At first glance, it's dazzling. Ladies trailing embroidered silk, knights clinking in polished mail, musicians playing soft lute music while trays of candied rose petals circulate. You even get your own audience chamber, where people kneel before you, kiss your hand, and shower you with flattery. Don't fall for it. Behind every compliment is a motive. Behind every curtsy is a calculation. The court is a snake pit in pearls and perfume, and you poor girl are the juiciest, most scrutinized snake of them all. Everyone wants something. The chamberlain wants a raise. The duke wants his daughter married to someone richer. The steward wants to skim extra from the pantry budget. Even the nuns who visit want permission to build another wing on their abbey. You can't say yes to all of them, and if you say no to the wrong person, you might just find yourself mysteriously short on allies the next time a succession crisis pops up. And then there's the gossip. Oh, the gossip. It moves faster than rats through flour. Did you raise an eyebrow to hide during mass? Someone says you sneered. Did you frown at your husband? They say you're scheming to dethrone him. Did you wear your mother's old gown? Apparently, that's a symbol of rebellion. Historians still argue whether certain queens like Eleanor of Aquitaine truly plotted against their royal husbands or whether they were just caught in the crossfire of malicious rumor. You try to manage your image. You host feasts. You lead charity drives. You distribute coins to the poor in a choreographed display of piety and virtue. But still, every smile you offer might be mistaken for seduction. Every headache blamed on sorcery. Every silence turned into an insult. And don't forget, half the people who call you your grace in public wouldn't hesitate to throw you under the royal carriage if it helped their family gain a title. Your ladies-in-waiting, bless them, are both your lifeline and your greatest liability. They dress you, bathe you, manage your letters, and sometimes hold your secrets. But they also come from noble families with agendas, and they talk to each other constantly. One moment of emotional honesty, one tear, one careless complaint, and suddenly the whole court hears that the queen weeps nightly, and might be suffering from a madness, passed down through her great-uncle Dot, and then comes the backstabbing. Literally, in some cases, poison tarts were less common than pop culture would have you think. But subtle methods of sabotage, absolutely real. You might find your favorite confessor suddenly transferred to a distant abbey, or the jeweler who made your coronet mysteriously arrested for fraud, or the wet nurse you trusted replaced without warning. Court politics is less Game of Thrones and more very slow, very polite annihilation. One historical example? Queen Marguerite of Valois. Yes, that Queen Margot was caught in the crossfire of religious wars, political schemes, and family betrayal so intense that even historians can't untangle them fully. She was exiled, imprisoned, accused of scandal, After scandal because she knew too much and said too little. And then, the power plays. You host a dinner for foreign dignitaries seems harmless. But suddenly, someone's cousin is seated in a more prominent position than someone else's uncle. And it's a scandal. A minor breach of protocol becomes a full-blown diplomatic incident, and it's somehow your fault. You spend the next 3 weeks composing apology letters in calligraphy and pretending you weren't secretly thrilled that Count Armand didn't get the seat. You wanted. You learn, eventually, to speak without saying anything, to offer smiles that mean neither yes nor no. You become fluent in the language of subtlety. When someone asks whether you support a certain marriage alliance, you respond with a beatific nod and God will guide our hearts in this matter, which is noblewoman code for I refuse to take the blame for this disaster. Meanwhile, the arts are paraded around as courtly distractions. Troubadours sing songs about your beauty. A visiting painter wants to capture your likeness. A poet dedicates a work to your wisdom, though he's clearly never heard you speak. You become the silent muse of a dozen mediocre sonnets, none of which rhyme properly, and all of which refer to your eyes as sapphires of heaven. Your actual eyes are green, but never mind. And yet, even among this glittering chaos, you find moments of fragile joy, a breeze through the window that smells like spring, a page boy who sneaks your favorite sweetmeat from the kitchens, a quiet chapel where no one expects you to talk. These are the slivers of peace you collect like beads on a frayed thread still. Every day is a performance. Every gesture is calculated. You learn to laugh without showing teeth, to cry only in locked rooms, to compliment people on things you didn't notice. You perfect the art of wearing a mask because letting it slip, even for a second, might be the end of you. And when you do get caught in a political scandal, and it's when, not if you'll be blamed, regardless of whether you had anything to do with it. The queen must have known, they'll say. Or worse, she influenced him. Your husband's decisions will be your fault, his failures, also yours, his mistresses. Somehow you're doing. Historians still debate whether queens like Catherine of Aragon genuinely wielded influence, or merely acted as scapegoats for their husbands' unpopular choices. So you smile, you curtsy, you listen and nod and bless and flatter, and wait for the next dagger, whether it's in your back or delicately served with tea, because in court power isn't about ruling, it's about surviving. It starts with a missed period, a flutter of unease in your belly, and the entire court suddenly acting like you're carrying the Holy Grail in your womb. The minute there's even a whisper of pregnancy, your body stops being yours. It becomes royal property, a sacred vessel entrusted with the future of the dynasty. Congratulations, you're now officially a womb with a crown. Of course, no one knows for sure yet, but that doesn't stop the gossip. A maid catches you looking tired after prayers. She's telling the steward. You ask for pears at supper. The midwife is consulted. You sneeze twice in the chapel, definitely pregnant. The castle is abuzz with premature celebration and anxious calculation. If you are, in fact, with child, your life shifts immediately. You're ushered into confinement, a misleadingly gentle term for being locked away in a special set of chambers, usually beginning about a month before your due date. The windows are shuttered, the tapestries drawn, and no men are allowed in. The idea is to create a sacred, pure space, free of evil spirits and political meddling. But what it really feels like is house arrest with embroidery. The confinement ritual is a strange mix of superstition and symbolism. You're surrounded by relics, bones of saints, splinters from the true cross, amulets to ward off breech births. The bed is draped in consecrated cloth. The walls decorated with images of the Virgin Mary and scenes from Christ's nativity. A crucifix hangs above your head, and a priest blesses your room before you sew in. It's meant to bring comfort. You are not comforted. Time drips like honey in that room. You read prayers aloud, hold beads until they leave indentations in your palms, and pretend not to hear the whispers of your ladies, who are already placing bets on the baby's gender. You can't leave unless it's absolutely necessary, and even then, only cloaked, veiled, and accompanied by at least 4 chaperones. Your meals are bland and carefully chosen, nothing exciting, lest it disturb the baby. And then, at last, the moment arrives. Labor. You might imagine a room filled with caring women and soothing voices. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's more like a medieval panic attack with incense. The midwife takes charge, and she brings assistance, charms, and herbal brews that smell like burnt socks. You grip the edge of the bed, or sometimes ropes hung from the ceiling, and push. No anesthesia, no pain relief, just prayers, gritted teeth, and the hope that this time your hips are wide enough. Let's be clear, childbirth is always dangerous in this era, but when you're queen, it's a public spectacle cloaked in privacy. Everyone waits outside the chamber, nobles, priest, even your husband, while women shuffle between rooms to deliver updates. If things go well, a great cry goes up. If they go badly, the silence is even louder. And things often go badly. Infection, breech birth, hemorrhage, any of these could kill you. Queen Jane Seymour, Henry VIII's third wife, died just 12 days after giving birth to a male heir. Historians still debate whether it was sepsis, retained placenta, or just the toll of endless royal expectations that did her in. Let's say you survive. Congratulations again. The next step, a ceremonial churching, where you're purified and allowed to rejoin society. It's a mildly insulting tradition based on the idea that childbirth made you spiritually unclean. You kneel at the chapel's edge, your head bowed, and receive blessings to be readmitted into the world like someone emerging from exile, rather than someone who just brought new life into it. The baby, meanwhile, is whisked away for baptism. If it's a boy, the church bells ring for hours. If it's a girl, the bells still ring but for less time, with notably less wine served at the celebration. You try not to notice. Of course, your newborn isn't really yours. He or she is a national asset, raised in the nursery, overseen by tutors and nurses chosen by your husband or his council. You may be allowed to visit, kiss a chubby cheek, sing a lullaby, but child-rearing? That's not your job. Your job is to make the next one, and fast. If you fail to produce another child within a reasonable time frame, people start whispering. Again, you consult physicians who prescribe everything from goat's milk to powdered amethyst. One even recommends wearing a badger's foot in your bodice supposedly for fertility. There's no evidence it works, but at least it's soft. The weight of motherhood isn't just physical, it's political. If your son dies young, the entire kingdom spirals. If your daughter is kidnapped on her way to a betrothal, yes, this happened more than once, you're blamed for not securing better protection. And if your child turns out to be unpopular or rebellious, the public looks back at your pregnancy with suspicion. Was the queen exposed to bad omens? Did she fast too long? Did she secretly pray in French instead of Latin? It's never ending. And remember, every pregnancy is a gamble. There are no ultrasounds, no antibiotics, no blood transfusions. Twins, a dangerous rarity. Premature birth, almost always fatal. Stillbirth, heartbreak followed by immediate political damage control. Even when your children survive, your influence over them might be limited. If your husband dies and your son inherits the throne as a minor, you might serve as regent, but only if you win the favor of enough council men. Otherwise, you're packed off to a nunnery or politely ignored while power-hungry uncles and advisors run the show. Catherine de' Medici, mother of 3 French kings, had to claw her way into regency and rule through layers of murder plots, civil war, and religious chaos. Historians still debate how much of her harsh reputation was earned and how much was manufactured by the men who hated being ruled by a woman who outmaneuvered them. So you sit there, back aching, belly swelling, again, bracing for another round. The herbal tonics taste worse each time. The midwives look more nervous. Your body is tired, your spirit threadbare. But there's no rest, not for queens, not in the Middle Ages. You smile gently as your husband enters the room. He comments on how lovely you look with that royal glow. You fight the urge to throw a pewter plate at his face. Instead, you say, "Thank you, my lord," and count backward from 10. Only 8 more months to go. The problem with power, as you've learned by now, is that it doesn't come with instructions, especially not when it's wrapped in family ties and dangling over a pit of vipers. At first, it was just whispers in the hall, then a strange absence at supper, then a letter intercepted by your steward, a letter containing your name alongside the word treason. And now you're sitting very still in your solar, listening to your husband's advisors argue about whether you should be watched more closely, as if you've suddenly transformed into some kind of beautiful, bejeweled spy. Welcome to Royal Marriage, Extended Edition, the part where your in-laws try to have you executed for crimes you didn't commit, and you can't even sneeze without someone assuming it's part of a plot. The accusation doesn't need to be true. It just needs to be plausible. And plausible is easy to fabricate when you're a woman with opinions, political connections, or heaven help you, a surviving brother who commands troops back home. Maybe you were seen speaking privately with the wrong nobleman. Maybe you gave alms to a monastery that supports the losing side in a border dispute. Or maybe your husband's sister never liked your face. That's enough. That's always enough. Now comes the drama. First, the interrogations. They're rarely violent for queens, but that doesn't mean they're gentle. You'll be questioned, usually alone, by clerics or counselors who ask the same thing 17 different ways. They smile, they flatter, they act concerned, but what they really want is a confession, or, at the very least, a contradiction they can twist into guilt. If they decide you're not guilty, you'll still be closely monitored, your letters intercepted, your rooms searched, your ladies-in-waiting replaced with unfamiliar faces who smile too hard and listen too much, your movements restricted, your prayers observed. If they decide you are guilty, well, let's just say your new lodgings have a lot less brocade. The Tower of London, the Chateau d'Vincennes, Castle Locks. These are not places queens vacation. They are places queens disappear. Margaret of Anjou, wife of Henry VI, spent years in exile and captivity after being blamed for her husband's failings. She wasn't executed, but she might have wished she was. Her son was killed in battle, her husband murdered, her allies scattered. She returned to France alone, penniless, and thoroughly disgraced. Historians still argue whether she was truly as ruthless as Shakespeare made her out to be, or simply a woman trying to survive in a man's war. And it's not just you they come after. Your friends, questioned. Your confessor, transferred. Your childhood nursemaid, jailed for loyalty to the queen over the crown. Treason charges are messy, and they love to spread like spilled ink. Your husband depends if he believes you or needs you for an alliance. He might protect you. Publicly, at least. Privately, you might be warned not to speak, not to write, not to involve yourself in anything. You're allowed to exist, but only quietly. Preferably in a remote castle, surrounded by hand-picked companions with all the warmth of wet linen. But if your husband doubts you or worse, wants a reason to get rid of you, you're in real danger. There's no need for formal charges, just a disappearance. Maybe you're sent to a convent for reflection. Maybe your food starts tasting different. Maybe you're moved to a drafty tower on the edge of the estate, where no visitors are allowed. For your safety, of course. Always for your safety. And the people, they don't riot for you. Not usually. Queens are loved in theory, but when things go wrong, they're the first to be blamed. A poor harvest? Must be the queen's wicked influence. A lost war? She gave the wrong advice. A bad storm? She angered God. A French tale tells of Queen Brunhilde of Austrasia, who ruled as regent for her grandson. She made enemies, powerful ones. She was ultimately accused of orchestrating the deaths of 10 kings and princes, a laughably inflated number, and was dragged behind a horse until she died. Historians still dispute how much of her crimes were fact or fiction, but none dispute that power, in the hands of a woman, made her dangerous in the eyes of men. Back in your chamber, the silence deepens. You're no longer invited to counsel. The court poet stops dedicating verses to your wisdom. The servants bow less deeply. You notice which nobles stop making eye contact and which ones whisper when you pass. It's all so subtle, so polite, so terminal. You cling to formality. You pray harder. You recite your genealogy to yourself like a spell. Daughter of a duke, cousin to an emperor, wife of a king. Surely someone will remember who you are. Surely someone will step in. Sometimes they do. Sometimes a powerful ally writes a letter. Sometimes the people in your homeland threaten war if you're harmed. Sometimes your husband has a change of heart. But more often, the only thing that saves you is irrelevance. If you're no longer politically useful or threatening, you might be quietly allowed to fade into the background. You become a ghost with nice gowns. You spend your days walking the cloister, feeding birds, or embroidering endless scenes of saints and battles you'll never fight. Your name becomes a memory, a footnote in someone else's legacy. And even then, you're still not safe. If your son rebels, they'll blame you. If your cousin invades, they'll say you encouraged him. If your husband dies, someone will swear they saw you with the apothecary the night before. Being a queen in the Middle Ages is not about ruling. It's about enduring, about standing perfectly still while the world tries to twist you into something. It can punish. So when you dream, you do not dream of thrones. You dream of woods, of horses, of laughter without witnesses, of a world where no one expects you to bless a marriage, secure a treaty, or smile while your family falls apart. You dream of being ordinary. You are royalty. You are grace and lineage and destiny wrapped in 15 layers of damask. And none of that will help when the lice find you. Here's the thing no one puts in the tapestries. Queens itch. They sweat. They stink. You might be the crown head of a great realm, but you're also a warm, slightly damp host for a thriving civilization of parasites. Let's begin with your hair. It's long, because cutting it is considered unholy or disgraceful in many courts. It's washed, occasionally, maybe every few weeks. If the weather is warm and the moon is right and the herbalist has time to steep you a rosemary infusion, otherwise, your ladies comb it, braid it, and douse it in scented powder to pretend it's clean And all that powder. Excellent cover for nits. One of your ladies is always carrying a comb with teeth so fine it could split atoms, just to scrape out the daily horror show from your regal scalp. Your gowns, of course, are elaborate marvels, but they're also heavy, lined with furs, and impossible to launder. Which means you don't really wash them. You air them out. Maybe hang a sachet of lavender from the neckline and call it a day. So, you wear the same few gowns on rotation, every layer clinging to your skin in summer and freezing stiff in winter. When they start to smell, more herbs, more incense. You've got rose water behind the ears and crushed thyme at your elbows. But beneath that it's just queen-scented stew. Your teeth, oh dear. Even if you have the good fortune to be born with strong ones, they won't last. The nobilities. Diet is heavy on sugar imported at enormous cost and used with reckless joy. Sugar on meats. Sugar in wine. Sugar sculpted into swans. And the result? Blackened molars, aching gums, and breath that could drop a jousting knight at 10 paces. You try mouthwashes. Wine boiled with mint, vinegar steeped in cloves. One queen reportedly chewed bits of frankincense. Another preferred dried rosemary, bound in a ribbon, pressed against the tongue like a holy wafer. Does it help? A little? Until someone offers you candied almonds again. Bathing itself is complicated. Yes, medieval people did bathe more than modern myth gives them credit for. But it was still a production. You need a heated room, servants, to carry the water, someone to perfume the towels, someone to warm the drying linens. And you can't do it often, or you'll weaken your humors. That's actual medical advice, by the way. Historians still debate whether certain queens like Elizabeth of York avoided baths for health or convenience, but regardless, your hygiene options are few and fickle. And yet, somehow, you're expected to be luminous. Your face must glow with divine serenity. You dab crushed lily root on your cheeks. You mix powdered pearls into face balm. One beauty recipe recommends using a paste made from boiled calf's hooves. And nothing says regal like livestock jelly on your skin. And for eye makeup, crush lapis lazuli if you're rich, crush charcoal if you're not, crush beetles if you're desperate. And sunscreen, crocodile dung. Egyptian queen swore by it. That's not a joke. Now add in the animals. Your palace isn't free of pests. It's full of them. Mice in the pantry, rats in the floorboards, fleas in your mattress. Even your beloved greyhound carries a trail of ticks. You try to fight back hiring fumigators to burn rosemary and copper pots, setting traps under the dining table, paying monks to pray over your bedchamber. But the pests always come back, and with them disease. It doesn't matter how high your rank is when plague comes calling. The fleas that bite your handmaid also bite you. The coughing steward who carries your fan might bring more than just gossip. The Black Death doesn't care about your crown. Whole courts flee to country estates when word of it spreads, abandoning cities in droves. Some lock themselves away with only musicians and jesters for comfort. What could go wrong? You start to notice strange things. People avoiding handshakes, clerics refusing to bless the sick, doctors wearing bird-like plague masks stuffed with sage and juniper, shuffling through the halls like apocalyptic crows. One cough at supper, and the mood turns icy. And no, medieval medicine doesn't help much. If you're sick, you'll be bled a lot, with leeches if you're lucky, with knives if you're not. You'll be fed mixtures of crushed snails and treacle, or wine infused with ground rubies. You'll sleep with red cloth tied around your neck, and be told not to look at the moon, lest it worsen your fever. Doctors may suggest wrapping you in vinegar-soaked sheets, or heating pigeon dung and pressing it to your chest. Some treatments might actually help: garlic, honey, lavender, but they're mixed in with so much nonsense it's a miracle you don't die of the cure. And let's not forget the humors. Your body, they say, is ruled by four fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If you're sick, it's because these are out of balance. Feeling anxious, too much black bile. Aching joints, probably phlegm. Your physician reads your urine by candlelight like it's a holy text. He smells it, tastes it, and declares you melancholy. You try not to take it personally. In this whirlwind of perfume and pus, you begin to long for something simple: a fresh breeze, a clean shift, a good night's sleep without waking up covered in bites or boils. Even your dreams smell faintly of lavender sachets and vinegar foot rubs. You remind yourself that queens are meant to endure, that beauty is suffering, that piety is reward enough. And still, deep down, you wonder what it would be like to run barefoot through the woods with your hair unbraided and your face gloriously bare. But know your attendants are already drawing your bath. 3 of them are arguing about the temperature. One drops in a bundle of crushed mint leaves. You smile, nod, and step into the steam. ready to face another day of being royalty in a world where a splinter can kill and a rose petal might hide a flea. The trouble with being queen in the Middle Ages is that you never really get to stop. Not when you sleep, not even when you die. You're not just a person, you're a symbol, a womb with a scepter. And while the chronicles will say you passed away peacefully in your sleep, it was probably more dramatic than that. But let's not jump ahead. There's still time left to be disappointed by your children, because at some point, if you survive childbirth, a big if, you'll find yourself raising heirs, or, more accurately, watching strangers raise them while you perform court duties and smile politely through back-to-back feast days. Your daughters are marriage alliances waiting to happen. Your sons are small, sticky balls of potential betrayal. It's not that they're cruel. Well, not all of them. It's just that your eldest has been raised to believe he is divinely destined for absolute power, and you, his own mother, are the one who will eventually stand in his way. Once your husband dies, if you outlive him, you may serve as regent. But once your son turns 16, he's the king now. You're expected to step aside, gracefully and permanently. Some queens do. Others, not so much. Eleanor of Aquitaine, for example, helped her sons rebel against their father. Then she was locked in a castle for 15 years. That's how medieval family arguments go. Let's say you're more diplomatic. You try to guide your son gently, offer advice, help him avoid bad advisors and reckless wars. But you start noticing changes. He stops asking your opinion. He replaces your trusted chamberlain with a 20-year-old he met at a tournament. The letters you send him go unanswered. He starts whispering about your spending. Your presence becomes awkward. You, once the center of courtly gravity, are now a reminder of a past he's trying to bury. And still, you smile. Because even when your health falters and your back aches, and your memory fades, you are still the queen. It's carved into your bones, but the bones are weakening. Maybe it's a chill that never leaves your chest. Maybe it's a strange pain in your side. Maybe it's just age 40 is practically elderly in your time, and you've lived through plague, childbirth, and 10 years of being seated next to the same bishop at dinner. You're confined to bed. Your ladies whisper more gently. The food becomes broth. The air smells of beeswax and violets. You see a priest every morning, and you begin dictating long, slightly passive-aggressive letters to relatives who owe you favors. There's a kind of clarity in it, as if at the end, you finally get a moment to breathe. The painters arrive. Not one, but several, each commissioned to create a portrait of your final days. You're pale, but radiant. The brush adds roses to your cheeks, softens your neck, makes you look impossibly serene. A vision of queenly piety, ready for sainthood, or at least a flattering inscription in Latin. One of the ladies tells you the people have started lighting candles for you. They gather outside the chapel and say your name. A few even cry. And you wonder quietly, secretly, if they would have wept for the real you. The virgin who once ran barefoot through the cloister garden, giggling after a thunderstorm. The one who hated peacocks and cheated at chess. The one who spent a full years pretending not to be terrified. But there's no time for sentiment now. Your final hours are spent beneath a canopy of blue silk. You're wearing a gown embroidered with tiny lions and lilies. Your hands rest on a rosary. The physician checks your pulse. The priest reads softly. Your son sits beside you, serious and unblinking. You can tell he's already thinking about his coronation robe. You close your eyes. It's over. Except, not really, because now comes the royal funeral for commoners. It's a shuffling cart and a quick prayer. For you, it's a weeks-long spectacle. Your body is embalmed, sort of. Herbs are stuffed into your mouth. Your entrails are removed and buried separately, sometimes even in a different country. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic or just practical. You're placed in a carved coffin, face up, hands folded. A wax effigy might be made of you and displayed at the wake, smiling blankly while mourners file past. There are trumpets. There are veils. There are horses decked in black velvet and banners flying your family crest. A river of candlelight winds through the cathedral, and when they finally lay you to rest, it's with a scepter in one hand and a prayer scroll in the other, as if those things might help you argue your way into heaven. In time, your tomb will become a landmark. Lovers will sneak into it at night. Revolutionaries will deface it. Children will leave flowers. Tourists will take selfies beside your stone likeness, not realizing you once stubbed your toe and cursed so loudly the bishop dropped his spoon. And somewhere, a young girl will hear your name in a story and think, just for a second, how lucky it must have been to be a queen. But not you. You know better. You were there when the crown pinched, when the blood stained, when the gold meant nothing and the silence was too loud. You know what it's like to sit on a throne and wish Just once to sit on the ground. And now you rest. Forever royal, forever exhausted. Forever misunderstood. So now, as the flickering torches fade and the cathedral doors drift gently closed behind us, you let the silence settle around your shoulders like a velvet cloak. The crown is gone. The noise is gone. Even the ache in your feet from decades of ceremonial walking and standing still for portraits begins to ease. You're no longer being watched. You don't have to smile or speak or pretend. You just breathe in and out, and maybe, just maybe, you start to drift not through a palace corridor or under a vaulted ceiling, but into a place where the air smells like fresh hay and the wind hums through tall grass. Somewhere quiet, somewhere far from court. You lie back beneath a sky where the stars are not metaphors, just points of light. Your hair is unbraided. Your skin is clean. Your hands are finally empty. No scepter, no ring, no sword dangling by someone else's decree. Just rest. Let yourself melt into the moment where nothing is required, nothing is expected. Let the noise of courtly life slip away behind you, its whispering halls, its perfumed lies, its gilded demands, and let the quiet carry you off into sleep. You've ruled long enough. Now you get to dream.